Hi there and welcome back to the ESPN Footy Podcast.
Hello everybody, welcome to the ESPN Footy Pod, proudly sponsored by Subway. Nothing's as big as a foot long. Back for another week, Matt Walsh here, Jake Michaels and Christian Jolly with you here today. And a heap to get through, Jake. We're going to talk some medical subs, we're going to talk draws and some quirky draw stats. We're going to look at how the Pies just keep winning and a whole lot more. How are you doing? Feeling better after having COVID?
I am feeling a bit better, yeah.
Wonderful.
Actually played soccer last night and felt awful after about 10 minutes just running around. So I think it takes a while to get your sort of fitness back after it knocks you down a bit. But yeah, feeling better. The body aches are gone, and good round of footy.
Oh, was it ever? I think it was one of the more entertaining rounds of footy we've had from a...
And we finally got that draw we were talking about a few weeks ago. We were wondering whether we'd get the draw this year.
Yeah, and the draw was exciting, wasn't it?
Well, for a 52 plays 52 game, it's funny, we just had the replay on the screen, and when Bailey Banfield, you don't notice it when you're watching it live, but the last score of the game was Bailey Banfield's snap, that one that curved all the way back in. That tied it at 52-52, and I think there was 8 minutes left, and to think no one scored a point in 8 minutes is kind of crazy.
We'll talk about the last few moments of that game in particular. Christian, you haven't had COVID yet, have you?
No, I haven't. All tests I've taken have all been negative, and all through the house, so no one's had it yet.
There you go. Yeah, I had the same feeling, Jake, where the first session back I had at the gym, I felt like I lifted the tiniest weight and just felt completely out of breath.
Takes a while, I reckon.
There we go. Before we get cracking into the main body of the podcast, something interesting you noticed from round 19, Jake?
Well, I think one of the big talking points to come out of round 18 was Bailey Fritsch and how hungry he was burning teammates, and I think it was brought up a little bit in the media how he'd potentially cost his team a couple of goals by being selfish, I guess, and taking shots. I'm not unless there's someone that's in a clear better position that's 100% going to kick the goal. I would rather Bailey Fritsch taking the shot because he's probably the best shot on the team. Certainly the best finisher on the team. Now, if you go and look at the Western Bulldogs Melbourne game, the D's were in kind of control in that last quarter. It then got tight. There was with 5 minutes to go, I think the Demons were up by 2 points. Fritsch gets the ball in the pocket, plays a little chip over the top to a one-on-one. It was Alex Neil-Bullen in the goal square with a Dogs defender. I can't remember who the Dogs defender was. And the ball gets spoiled out. They don't score from it. Ball goes up the other end. We know the Dogs end up winning. If Fritsch takes responsibility, and the commentary wasn't around last week of him being selfish, he kicks that goal 8 times out of 10, or he runs in and handballs over the top to Neil-Bullen and he kicks the goal. They go up by 8. It's a different game. Now, this could be the difference. A lot of coulds, I know, but this could be the difference in Melbourne finishing top 4 or not. And as we know, a lot of people will say, well, top 4, yep, you can genuinely win the flag. Bottom 4 or 5th to 8th, probably not. So that is a massive moment I look
Sliding
back on.
doors moment.
And I really think it all the reason he did that stemmed from everything that happened last week and the commentary around him.
Maybe we need to ask Josh Dunkley when he's on the pod next about how much the outside influence and reading things in the media
has to play a role. Like even players that say, and I don't know what Dunks says about this, but players that say, I try and I ignore it, don't read it, you would be aware, especially something like that. You'd have to be aware. Even if you're not seeing it directly, your teammates would see it. The club, you would know. So yeah, it's one to watch to see what the D's or where they end up finishing. But just something I thought at the time, just surprised he chipped it up, and it was a 1-on-1. Wasn't like a player that had a height advantage or anything. It's just it was a bit strange, but anyway. That's what happens.
D's run home's pretty tough.
Very tough.
Freo this Friday night in Perth. They've got the Blues, they've got the Pies, and they've got the Lions at the Gabba.
At the Gabba, yeah. So
not in that order.
Yeah, I think it is in that order.
Oh, okay. Maybe it is.
Yeah. So you would think they need to go 3-1. Well, they do. They need to go 3-1 to make top 4. Now, you'd say Melbourne. Most people would pick Melbourne to win most games, but are we anymore? Are we confident? I'm not. I could see Melbourne, not saying they're going to lose all 4, but there's no gimme game in there. They're all tough. And if they go 2-2, which is probably likely, they're probably going to miss top 4.
Well, you mentioned to me they're favourites currently for Friday night, playing over. That surprised me. On current form, I'd have that as a 50-50 game, or Freo
they're
just
a slight
in front.
favourite over Freo right now for Friday night.
Christian, something from the weekend that took your fancy?
Yeah, well, you sort of summed it up at the start. We had a draw, we had a shot after the siren. We'll mention we had one of the highest scoring days as well for quite a long time, but keeps coming back. I mean, for 2 or 3 weeks they've been shooting themselves in the foot, and I think Hardwick put it the best. It's Richmond beating Richmond, but just kept looking into their numbers and just stumbling across even more sort of numbers to put their season into context. They've been in front for 62% of game time this year across all their matches, and currently not in finals. So I think the highest percentage I could find that of a team being in front across the season and not making finals was Hawthorn 2019, who had 52% time in front across the season. So we're slightly in front for more than half the games. But yeah, Tigers are at a whopping 62%.
They've not had a good month, have they?
Well, it's been the opposite. Rowan Connolly wrote a piece last week, and it happened again. It's not so much luck, but it's just funny how some teams seem to be on the right end of those results, and other teams the opposite. And Collingwood has been the one that's been successful winning these games, and Richmond it's the opposite. So they could very easily be flipped around. In an alternate universe, they're flipped around.
I mean, we've got it. Even if you look at the expected wins of the expected ladder using expected scores, they're first at the moment. So if
they're on top of the whole
ladder. If everyone had scored at proper accuracy, Richmond would be number one in the competition this year. But instead, they're on the outside, looking in at the moment.
If they hadn't won 3 flags in a row recently, you'd be tearing your hair out as a Richmond fan, hearing that sort of stuff.
Oh, it is. It's and I think before they won the flags, they were ninthman, and all the jokes around Richmond. It's almost like, well, yeah, it's you're right. The 5 years that they've had to buffer in between the old Richmond and what they've had to suffer through this year, I think they can handle it with their 3 premierships.
Fair enough. Something I noticed. Look, I do love the goal review system. I think having a system in place where you get the right result eventually, even if it takes a little bit of time, is a good idea, because you don't want teams losing on on a poor decision or one that was not seen by a goal umpire or whatever it may be. But the one I found really strange on the weekend, game in the balance at Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide and Geelong are playing. Patrick Dangerfield and Aliir's hand and Dangerfield's foot are heading towards the goal line with the ball just ahead. And it's a line ball call as to who's touched the ball first, whether it's the foot and it would have been a goal, or whether it's the hand and it would have been a behind. The goal umpire at the end immediately called it a touch behind, and was confident. And we love a confident goal umpire. And I've always said, too often we see reviews for marks that have been taken a metre behind the goal line and they're still reviewing it. I don't think we need to review those. I do think we need to review what happened on Saturday afternoon, because it seems like, and it probably would have been deemed inconclusive from the vision that we saw, but it seems like it probably actually should have been a goal to Geelong.
Yeah, the first angle I saw, I thought goal, and the second angle I thought might be touch. But that in itself shows how tight it was. And to your point, why was it not reviewed?
It was a strange one, because you think in that situation, the goal umpires like to err on the side of caution, but this was a straight away happy to call it. And look, he possibly had the right result in the end, but to me, there's just this lingering chance that at least if it goes through another set of eyes, it's only going to be 45 second review. At least everyone's then on the same page, because look, it could have been really costly for Geelong, and we talk about top 4 and all this sort of other stuff. They've probably got it sewn up at this point, but at the stage that the game was at, it was a tight contest, and the Cats ended up winning. But,
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. So the Cats ended up winning, so no one talks about it.
Yeah.
So if Port win that game, that's what everyone's talking about throughout the week. The other part of it is, and it's to that Fritsch point of before about the media commentary. How often do you hear throughout a game when something is reviewed, these old dinosaur commentators saying, do we really need to be wasting time doing this? And then it's the same thing. You're telling me the goal umpires aren't watching other games and hearing this and thinking, maybe I've got to back my call. But to what point? How far? I agree 100%. That one should have been reviewed. Even if it's inconclusive, it was such a 50-50 that you just review it and get the right result, especially in a tight game like that.
We're also going to talk about goals after the siren, and there was one that we were discussing before we got on air about Peter Riccardi, Geelong against Carlton, and that was very possibly touched off the boot as well. You look at incidents like, was it Cameron Mooney in the grand final where it shaved the post? Was that 2007?
Yeah.
One of the ones.
2009.
Yeah. Josh Jenkins in the showdown.
Yeah, all these moments that probably could have gone the other way, and why don't we want to get the right result for this sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've always said the review's fine, and I have no issue with how many reviews we really see. Do you guys at Champion keep numbers on how many reviews are done?
Yeah, we would, because we sort of basically have a break-in-play score review. So we will know how many have been called, but we don't know what the initial, how many have been switched or changed from the initial call, because we don't. Yeah,
because I understand they check after every goal, but the amount of times a game that they actually stop play, ball's given back to the umpire, which we still don't really know why, and they send it upstairs. On average, is it 2 or 3 times a game? 2
or 3 off the top of my head.
Yeah, so it's not that much. Like, it's once every 40 minutes of football we get that, and it takes 30 seconds. I don't think it's not as if it's like we're getting a review after every second score.
Yeah.
So I think people need to chill out, understand that every now and then it's going to happen, and if it means we're more often than not getting the right result, then we just do it.
Agreed. I mentioned off the top, we almost went a whole season without a draw. But of course, it had to be Richmond, who for the 3rd straight week seem to have shot themselves in the foot, Jake. You can't really write this sort of stuff. And again, like the game against North, where there was a series of strange decisions and errors that led to that result being North winning. The same way, Richmond really could have won and should have won that game against Fremantle.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this now. Do you remember, slightly off topic, but you'll see where I'm going with it. Do you remember, was it J.R. Smith for Cleveland when he didn't take the shot and he tried to dribble the ball out and LeBron's standing there like pleading with him, like, why did you not shoot? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That was like, that shot of LeBron James was like the shot of the season, and that kind of cost them, and they ended up losing the championship.
I think I know where you're going with this.
The look on Jack Riewoldt's face, that expression, that despair when Noah Cumberland played on and the siren sounded and the game was over, the draw, which, again, like kind of Melbourne and Geelong, Collingwood, all these things, we don't know what's going to happen, but that could cost them finals. That seems to me to be the shot of the season for Richmond. Just like, that sums it up. It was just so close, but so far. And yeah, there's just been so many things, and I said it before, you can do it again, and they win half these games. Like Christian said, they could easily be top of the ladder, certainly top 4. For them not to be in finals is staggering. But I thought the criticism of Noah Cumberland was a little bit unfair.
Horrendous.
Not just because he's a third gamer who's actually shown some really good signs, but because the criticism seemed to not be for Noah Balta. He was the one at fault, in my opinion, for what happened. And I know some of you guys might not fully agree with what I'm going to say, but for him to take that amount of time, not get his shot off, and as I said, the last 8 minutes, no one scored. That was inexcusable. And not to mention that he had a shot earlier in the game, in what was a low-scoring game, from 20 metres out directly in front, and missed that as well. I think he was responsible. And the thing that probably frustrated me and would frustrate a lot of Richmond fans was he didn't seem to take responsibility afterwards in the post-game interview, where he kind of brushed it off and said, "Oh, that's footy. Things happen. Got to move on to next week." Yeah, I understand that, but you've also got to put your hand up at times and say, you know what, I messed up. It's my fault.
Yeah, but I don't know if you do that 5 minutes after the game. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
If not 5 minutes after the game, then when?
As in 5 minutes after the game, live on air to whoever was holding the microphone in his face. That's not, you get into the rooms and you probably talk a bit more like that. But I enjoyed listening to Noah Balta after the game. I thought he was pretty honest. And I think that's just where sportsmen are at with their... they do so much psych training and think you can't harp on the past. And I think we saw him almost doing that, processing that in his head, sort of realizing, all right, I've made a mistake and I've done this, but the way I've been taught to sort of process things and talk about things is got to move on to the next one. We've got to forget about that and not do that again next time I'm in that same situation.
Then say that, because the quotes weren't great. Look, the interview, I was actually quite surprised they got him. Richo went over to him and they got the interview. I'm like, this is going to be quite interesting. So I'm watching the interview and, what do you do? Yeah, that's the game of footy. Look at the clock. Yeah, take your 30 seconds. I'm sure he was told to take 30 seconds by one of the senior teammates.
I think he said Jack Riewoldt told him to take his full 30. Yeah, take 30, not 36.
Goodness gracious, though. Have a look. Have some game awareness. And do what footballers do. They train for this.
Yeah.
And I think later on he was just sort of like, oh, well, who cares? It's just not the right thing to say at the time.
Look, Jack Riewoldt's been the culprit in a couple of games. He kicked 2-6 against North. Kind of, you could say, cost them that game, and I think he was inaccurate again in this one. But he is a smart player, Jack Riewoldt, and he would have waited 29 seconds before he started walking. And again, not to criticise Cumberland, but he would have, if Riewoldt takes that mark, he just doesn't even turn around.
Yeah, you talk about that, the LeBron James sort of action that Jack Riewoldt did. It would have been like living in a bad dream for the second time over, because we know out of all those players on the field, I would have thought Jack Riewoldt would have had the most game sense to know exactly where the game was at when Noah Cumberland
he's a 300-game veteran. He's kicked so many goals that he knows the game awareness, the situation.
But just to see it 2 weeks in a row, to see a teammate just go off his line at the siren, you couldn't imagine that happening. And as I said, to not only see it twice in your career, but to see it twice in back-to-back weeks for Jack Riewoldt, it must be just killing him.
Yeah. Do you drop Balta after that? I mean, what do you do? Do you put your arms around him and say, no, we'll get you back in next week? Like, is there room in the game to sort of be like...
I don't think you drop him. I mean, they need to win. They need to win, and they can't lose another game. They got to win. I think they got to win all 4 now. Certainly got to win 3. 3 and a draw might be good enough, because the percentage is still better than the Bulldogs, I think. But
still better than Collingwood's.
Yeah, but no, I think you don't drop him, and it's not something that happens all the time, but yeah, I think you just got to be better than that. And to some extent, I agree. Like, it is footy and it does happen, but mistakes do happen. But yeah, it was a pretty egregious error, and yeah, I think he'll despite what he says that it is footy, he will be living with that for a while.
I think one thing that's been glossed over across the last 2 weeks, and it's going back to Noah Cumberland, is probably how good he's been, how clutch he's been. He took the mark that led to the Jake Art. Like, he's the one that delivered it inside 50 to Jake Arts the week before. Plus, he's clunked that mark when he really needed to now. So, 3 games into his career, he's sort of made it, become a good medium forward. I've sort of said he's sort of doing the Jacob Townsend role for me. If Richmond go on and win another premiership, he almost ends up like a Jacob Townsend story. But again, I think I'd just look a little bit deeper in the last 2 weeks and just thought, well, Noah Cumberland looks like he could be one of those clutch players that in 100 games time of his, we could be talking about him like Robbie Gray. On
the other side of it, with the news of Cain Lambert retiring, which has been glossed over a little bit, considering how important he was to the three-peat. Not three-peat. Yep.
3 premierships.
3 premierships, yeah. What am I thinking? Yeah. Yeah, it just the fact that he's now gone. There's the storyline about Dusty. Is he going to leave? Falling off. Probably not going to make finals this year. Is Richmond looking at a bit of a rebuild?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? This is where clubs and list managers and coaching staff need to all be on the same page, because we've seen this from West Coast after they won their flag and how they've tried to keep going. We saw Collingwood really struggle with their list management decisions after they made that grand final as well in 2018.
Geelong's really been the only team to stay relevant.
Hawthorn tried for a while and were okay, and then fell pretty quickly. So the conversations need to start happening now about where Richmond sees itself in 5 years.
Do you want to be fighting around that sort of 7th to 10th mark, or do you go down for a couple of years in the hope of rebounding back up?
I need a longer time to answer it, but I'm leaning towards the 7th and 10th mark. There's not a lot of evidence that tanking yourself and taking yourself to the bottom of the ladder does much good for any team. I know Melbourne got through with their premiership, but that was 07 and 08 was a long time before they won their premiership. I don't know how much you can really account to that. Tanking in world sport, there's not a lot of great evidence that it gets to the ultimate success.
Because even if you get the number 1 draft pick, well, what guarantee is that?
So that's what I mean. Being 7th and 10th and in the mix and getting some finals experience and hoping to sort of just top up every now and again and go again. I think that's a better.
And I guess by doing that, you're also more likely to attract other players if you're playing in finals, albeit finishing 7th, than as opposed to being 17th.
There's also a balance to be struck between looking at the older generation who are still probably some of their better players, and then looking to move them on while they have currency, while they have value.
That's the big thing, is the currency, being able to flip the players. And I think that's
Hawthorn waited too long.
Yeah, and Geelong have been lucky in terms of how they've been able to do it with some, free agency probably came at the right time, so they've been able to get some of those guys for free. But that's going to be the big thing for Richmond. Yeah, it could be great to lose Dusty at the moment, because they could end up with 4 great things coming back. But yeah, that's the thing. Cochin, Riewoldt, all those sort of guys. They once they leave your club with you don't get anything in return.
Yeah.
Interesting times for the Tigers. Do we like the draw, Jake? Because we've had, obviously, inevitably, there's commentary saying, let's just play some extra time and let's just get a result and get some 4 points. Do you like the draw, or do you subscribe to that theory?
The only thing with the draw that kind of is frustrating is that 2 points in the grand scheme of things means nothing. It's almost like both teams lost, unless a team has multiple draws in a season. Like, it does feel like a team has lost because you're now in this limbo of how many points you've got. But no, keep the draw as is. I don't think playing extra time
Bit of
is
drama,
needed.
bit of discussion.
We don't have it often. Like,
Yeah.
we have 1 or 2 draws a season. Why? What about football, like soccer? Every second game's a draw, but you don't play extra time unless it's a knockout competition.
Yeah.
No, I think keep it as a draw. That in itself is entertaining, I think, and yeah.
Well, to the neutrals at least.
Yeah, I don't think... It's always a bit weird, and players say afterwards, I think they were talking to Andy Brayshaw, and he said, I've never played in a draw, and he said it's just so weird, the feeling about 3 times.
Well, I've heard that as, that's justification to change it, apparently, because it feels weird for the players in a game. Too bad.
No.
It's still a draw.
Win the game then, or lose the game. Yeah, no, the only thing that is different is no theme song is played.
It's just you're just left to just discuss, and there's this buzz that goes around the ground. That's very
It is
strange.
a weird feeling, but who cares? That's part of it. So's getting beaten by 100 points, but we're not going to play a mercy rule at 10 goals up.
Got me thinking, some quirky, some fun draw stats. Christian, we asked you to sort of look at draws throughout the years, and Jake sort of said just then we have 1 or 2 a year. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've had 156 draws across AFL, VFL history.
156 draws in like 130
Yeah, so
years?
just over,
One a year.
one a year. But yeah, so looked at home and away games that have been played. Looked at all games. So if you look at all premiership games, 16,145 games of footy have been played.
16,000?
145 since 1897, that is. And 164 of those been draws, so basically 1%.
Right.
Take out finals because obviously you can't always have a draw in a final. So home and away, 15,463 home and away games, 156 draws. So again, 1% a game. So just some of the quirky stats. So which teams have been involved in the most draws? Essendon across their history have been involved in 36. Carlton with 34 and Collingwood with 28. So obviously the 3 of the oldest and bigger clubs.
Fair enough.
But Collingwood, 5 of those have been in finals. So the only team that's had more than 2 finals that have finished in draws is Collingwood. I've heard 5.
Yeah.
So
Well, the grand final in 2010, was it them against North Melbourne?
77.
77?
Yep.
The West Coast one?
In 1990, yep.
The West Coast one again?
Yeah.
What else?
I think there was one back. I haven't got the years, but I think there was one another drawn
the
grand
20s
final
or
against
something.
Richmond or Geelong back in the 20s or 30s. So
Wow.
Richmond. Fitzroy sort of come up high. They're 25 draws across their time for a team that's been out of the comp for about 20 years. Is still equal 5th for the most draws. Looked at
Don't know if you've got this, but I feel like Jack Riewoldt himself has played in quite a few draws.
So
Do we have anything on players?
yeah, so he's at the equal most. So the one that surprised
done.
me is another one is Shane Edwards, who is reaching his 300th game this week. And I thought 300 games, like I love Shane Edwards, been a massive fan of him. But 300 games, that's a long time he's been in the league. And I'm like, I didn't realise he's been in the league that long. But he's also
He's probably been in all of them as well.
Yeah, he's played in 7 draws. So himself, Jack
7?
Riewoldt,
That's
Brad
a good
Johnson
hit,
for the Bulldogs, and 2 Essendon players from back in the day. I think Barry Davis and Bill Hutchinson from 1940s and 50s.
7 out
But-
of 300, right? We're talking about the sort of 1%-ish.
Yeah.
He's well above the...
Who's played the most games without a draw? You got that one.
I'll be able to. I don't have it on my piece of paper, but I'll be able to chase that up from the spreadsheet I was using. That's probably interesting. Yeah, I don't know how many draws Michael Tuck played in anything like that, but looked at the most common score. So I don't know if you guys want to play a bit of closest to the pin challenge. What's the most popular score in VFL AFL history?
I would be like
All games.
78. Somewhere
1 point
around.
off.
Okay.
79.
You were going to say it.
No, I wasn't going to say that, but I remember we did this recently. Yeah. No, because we were talking about the most common margin. The most common margin is
1 point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 79 is the most common score, and it's the most common score in draws as well. So it's the most. That's.
I guess when
you
you got 16,000
How many
home and away
79
games.
all draws have we had?
Eight times we've had. So 8 of the 8 of the 164 draws have been with a score of 79. 76 has been scored 6 times in draws. So that's the second most common score in a draw.
Do you have the
10th
highest draw score?
Yeah, 10th most common score. 76 is the 10th most common score across all games, but second most.
Have we had a 200-point team draw?
No, so the lowest score in a draw, again, 1898. No surprise there. Carlton Melbourne, 28 all. don't know.
No,
52's for the modern era is pretty low.
under the
low,
roof.
Yeah. So in 2020, again, shortened season, we had a 36-all draw. And that was Collingwood Richmond. So that was the 5th lowest ever. And again, shortened games. But yeah, 132 points each scored by Essendon and Carlton in 93.
Ooh.
Don't know if you guys might be too young for that one, but
I'd
I
have been about
remember
6 months old.
round 2, 1993, I was sitting at Waverley with the good old A, B, G, H, E, F scores up on the scoreboard.
Yes.
And I think we worked out that EF was Carlton and Essendon. And we heard a guy in front of us say, Kernahan's just taken a mark and the siren's gone.
Oh.
I stared at that screen for 10 minutes waiting for the score to change and nothing happened because it never came up with post-match
He
or
missed
game
on the
finish.
full, didn't he?
He kicked it out on the full, but it was for 10 minutes afterwards just going, why is that score not changing? It was a draw, but that was a high-scoring draw
missing
we've ever seen.
Missing everything when you've got a chance to beat Essendon, that should preclude you from being on the Carlton team of the century. That's criminal.
You're not in the Hall of Fame.
Anything else before we move on?
I just looked at so the most inaccurate team in a draw. Carlton drew with the Bulldogs after scoring 9 goals 25 in 1935.
You don't even deserve the 2 points.
The Bulldogs
Did they give you the 2 points?
Well, the Bulldogs got 12-7, yeah. And the most accurate in a draw, sort of eking out the 2 points, was Saints finished with a draw for with Hawthorn. So the Saints scored 14 goals 3 across the game, and Hawks scored 13-9. That was in 2010. So again, that's one of the draws where, St Kilda's probably walking away thinking, geez, we're lucky to sort of pull 2 points out of that one with, 10 fewer scoring shots.
I agree. I think the draw's great. You get all this sort of like quirky stuff.
There really
They're all
that
quite
many people
memorable.
that are against it?
Seems
staying?
like it.
Few
I
in
get
the
exhausted by it every
commentary
year.
in the media.
Yeah.
I haven't
It
heard too
seems
much
like
about
it.
it this time, but
Do you like the draw? Maybe we'll do a poll on Twitter at
Yeah.
Footy Tips. Get around it. Do you like the draw or do you not?
I think
Collingwood.
it's different I think it's different in a final. A final is different because you
have to get a result.
Yeah, you need a result, and I think they made the right decision by not having the replay grand final anymore. But for regular home and away games, I think just leave it as a draw.
If you're not good enough to win from the preceding 120 minutes, bad luck, you get 2 points. The Pies, speaking of luck perhaps, have won again. Another close one. And Jake, this is a year after they finished 17th. They're in the top 4 now. They look likely to, they're going to play finals. They could possibly finish in the top 4 again. Be the first time, I reckon, since West Coast came back from when they finished last or second last or something like that. Made a prelim the next year. Am I imagining things?
Yeah, no, they did. Over about 2014 or something, was it?
Yeah, I
probably
can't think of one since. That
the
would
best
come from
comeback
this low.
since then.
Yeah.
So they're on the right track. They've obviously won a few tight ones, though. So their percentage of 106.2 is a bit here nor there. So that's where they've been in danger of falling out. But because they keep winning, it looks like their spot is assured. But Jake, thinking back to this game, and we're going to analyse the last few minutes of this one as well, I don't think I can remember a team that was so likely to lose with 45 seconds left, and then they won.
No, nor can I. When Harry Jones caught Jeremy Howe holding the ball a minute, what was there left? A minute 10 or something?
He kicked the ball with about 40 seconds left.
Yeah, so at that moment it was like, Collingwood fans in the aisles heading for the exits. Essendon had won. Like you couldn't, you if you said, I'll bet my house on Essendon, the bookies will say, we'll give you $1 back if they lose. Like there was just no way that they were ever going to lose that game from that point, yet they did. And there's so many moments from that last 70 seconds that you can look at, and I know you'll probably talk about it more. But for me, it wasn't the fact he missed. It wasn't an easy shot. Like he hit the post, took his full amount of time, hit the post. It wasn't the miss. It wasn't even the way they set up, which was horrific. It wasn't the fact that they let Bianco on the wing get the ball in acres of space, which was horrific. It was the fact that Jamie Elliott, who's one of the shortest players on the ground, was able to outmark 2 Essendon defenders who didn't get any body on him and didn't get a fingernail on the ball. That, to me, was the most inexcusable part of it. And credit to him. Like, I've always loved Jamie Elliott. I think he's been a great player and a forgotten player for a long period of time because he has had some serious injuries and missed a lot of footy. But he's always been a beautiful kick for goal. And he knew it was his moment because it wasn't like there was 5 seconds left. There was 25 seconds left when he marked that. That was the other thing, how quick they got the ball up to him. And he just waited. He said, no, I'm going to take the shot. And he waited to the point where he's like, well, I know I can't play on now. I know I can't run around and get an extra couple of meters. So that was going to be a tougher kick. But he still backed himself in. And look, credit to him. Collingwood's streak continues. But, Yeah, the fact that he was able to take basically an uncontested mark with two players around him was inexcusable.
Going back to the Harry Jones thing, and we talked about Cumberland and inexperience compared to what Riewoldt might have done in the situation for Richmond. I don't know how much this would happen at AFL clubs, but surely there's a message delivered to someone like that in that situation. He's up. His team is up. The worst thing you can do in the situation is give the ball back to Collingwood, right? Yeah. So having the shot at goal would extend. If you kick the goal, great. But if you miss, which is just as likely, say it's a 50-50, he was probably a better than a 50-50 chance from where he was. It was he was straight in front, wasn't acres out. But he misses, the ball goes back. If he misses out on the full, the balls go back. If it falls short, it could be marked. There needs to be a thing in AFL where they start doing the NFL sort of style, take a knee. And that's look behind, because everyone's going to be rushing in to try and get on the line and force the ball over or get an intercept mark or whatever. Dyson Heppel, or whoever it needs to be, needs to sort of go 20 metres back and across and say, Harry, take your 25 seconds, 27 seconds, turn around and kick it to me. I can take another 7 seconds off. I can find someone quickly while Collingwood scramble.
Yeah, but the thing is, there was a minute. So you said he kicked it with 45 seconds to go. If he kicks it back to Heppel with 45 seconds to go, he's got 6 seconds, and then he's got to kick it. At that point, there shouldn't be another open player.
Well, there might not be, but you're still keeping the ball away from Collingwood as long as you can.
Yeah, but
I still think you take the shot with that amount of time left.
I agree. I like your idea about taking the knee, but there's nothing in football that's as safe as taking a knee. So even kicking backwards to Heppel, you're still a risk of turning it over. Yeah. So I'm more big on Essendon's setup from the kick in. You should not be able to score against from a team that's within 30-40 seconds of a kick in, when all they got to do is try to not let you score. Essendon weren't in attack mode anymore. They didn't need the ball. They just needed to make sure, and that, as soon as Harry Jones missed, they just needed to make sure Collingwood didn't get it to within 50 metres of goal.
Yeah. They set up for the quick kick down the middle, the big talk down the middle.
But they didn't need,
and they left Bianco in space.
20 blokes in the space of 10 square metres.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just spreading out those 18 players. While Harry Jones was having a shot at goal, he should have been the odd one out, and the other 17 players should have been set up across the next 140 metres of the field. Why they were all sort of... you're talking about they were defending that first kick in 70 minutes. That's great. What about the next one?
There were 22 players, from both sides, in about a 10 square metre little patch.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, why are they not spread out across the ground? They didn't need a single person closer to their attacking goal than Jones, and everyone should have been behind him, set up in a zone, and then they can go to where the ball is. And that should have. They
don't even need to go to where the ball is half the time. That's what I'm saying. They didn't need to win the ball. They knew
Collingwood. They need to stop.
Collingwood can't score from centre half back. Collingwood have a range that they can score on.
All they needed they just needed a stoppage. And the game was over. And they needed whether it was Heppel or Merritt or Shield or some experienced player in the team to be barking those instructions, because the thing was, it was from the moment that there was that holding the ball, and then there was the couple of seconds of Jeremy Howe with his hands on his head, and it felt like the game was over, and Jones even had a few extra seconds because the ball went away. They had about 40 seconds to be ready for that. It wasn't like it was a flying shot and they were all out of position. They had so much time.
So did Essendon lose it, or did Collingwood win it?
Essendon lost it because you can look back to the first quarter, and you got to remember, it was, 38-1 at quarter time. So I feel sorry for Essendon fans, because they lost that game twice. They had to experience the first quarter thrashing, then they had the euphoria of thinking they'd won the game, and then they lost it out of nowhere.
A few TikTok vids came across my desk, Jake. There was one in particular being taken by someone from the MCC members. The siren goes, and this Essendon fan jumps up celebrating. I was just thinking, oh no, this poor bloke's gone early and started, celebrating, and he just sort of watches the ball sail through and just sits down.
You must be wasted or something. You'd have to know the situation of the game.
9-win streak now, so... And you look at the margins and the teams they've beaten. So Essendon +4, Adelaide +5, and the Crows were steaming home. And they were up at 1.2 in that game. North Melbourne, they were 5 goals up against the Pies, ended up winning by 7. Gold Coast, they won by 5, and Gold Coast was up by about 12 with 15 minutes to go. GWS, they won by 11. Hawthorn, they won by 4. Carlton, they won by 4. Wiedering goes down early in that game, and maybe things are a bit different. How much of this is luck, and how much of it is they are a team that knows how to deal with these tight contests? Because it's you can kind of make arguments for both, I get the feeling.
I don't think it's either, to be honest. I don't really subscribe to the fact that, a team is just good at winning tight games, because I wouldn't be surprised if they then lost their next 8. I think that's just... streaks happen like this, and I don't think there's any reason behind why it happens. I also don't really believe in luck. It's not as if their opposition has just kicked 3 goals 50 every game and they're just kicking themselves out of it. They've won the games. They deserve to win all these games.
You just said Essendon lost.
Well, Essendon did. They shot themselves in the foot in the first quarter and the final. But Jamie Elliott went back and
as you said, Collingwood kicked 6 goals to zip in the first quarter. So
they deserve to win the game. I just believe that in the long run, and I imagine Christian would agree with this, is everything sort of does revert back to the mean.
A little bit, yeah, but yeah, it definitely does. But I think that's why this is more than just luck, and this is exactly what we spoke about Essendon in terms of not probably knowing exactly what they were supposed to do in that game situation. What Collingwood executed with that ball and getting Bianco free, sure they practiced it. I'm sure that wasn't a fluke. So again, it's about training for those game situations and just being prepared, sort of not panicking when you're behind, not trying to get sort of too far ahead of yourself when you're in front. I think they had a pretty big lead against Carlton, and Carlton just took 25-30 minutes for Carlton to get back, and all Collingwood could do was hold on for that 30 minutes, but they did.
And they did, yeah.
They've had other ones where they've overrun teams in the last 30 minutes, so they've done it all different ways.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
I seriously don't think there's any luck to it, and I give a lot of credit to Collingwood for being able to do the way they train their game management and game situation stuff must be incredible.
I was way off with Collingwood at the start of the year. I had them finishing bottom 4. I really was down on Pies at the start of the year, and it was an awful call by me in the end. And I'm not trying to find a get out here, but do we think the draw and the benefit of finishing in the bottom 6 is you do get an easier draw? Do you think the draw has helped them? Do you think that next year they're a genuine top 4 chance?
Well, they lost to West Coast to North, so it's a bit of a weird one to answer. It's like the 2 easiest opposition. They've only lost 4 games, and 2 of those have been to the bottom 2 teams in it. So
did they lose to North?
It should have. Oh, sorry. They got over the line against North. Yeah, they just
lost,
got over. But
they
lost to West Coast.
They lost that weird one to West Coast round 2 or 3 or something. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, even this year they're going to be a top 4 team, but no one's really talking about Collingwood as can they win the flag this year?
Well, the percentage, like we touched on it before, 106.2. Going back to 2000, just 5 teams have finished in the top 4 with a percentage of less than 110. So we're looking at 106.2 North in 2000, 107.8 Richmond 2001, 109.7 the Pies in 2002, 109.8 Fremantle in 2007, and 109.3 North in 2007. Hasn't happened since 2007.
Yeah, I mean, if they finish 4th and play, say, Geelong at the MCG, they're a chance. Like, I know we've still got a month of footy to play, and who knows what's going to happen, but I just no one's given it any thought that how far can Collingwood go this year. It seems to be they're on a good winning streak and they're winning tight games and all of this stuff, but they're not. It's not like they get scraping into the 8. They might scrape. They might not even scrape in. They might comfortably make the top 4.
They could. Christian, any other bits and pieces on Collingwood that are worth mentioning for the listeners?
I was probably more looking at how out of the box this season has been for them. So you're right, the 106.2%. They're currently, they're 13-5 at the moment. So that's the second lowest percentage ever of a 13-5 side at 106. The 8 games that they've won by 1 to 12 points is the equal most won in a season. I think we've seen it 4 other times with the team winning at least 8 games by 1 to 12. So again, another win by less than 2 goals. Yeah, they'll be the highest record. So again, I'm probably one of those ones. I can't see them winning the whole thing, but I think it's a big tick for them this year in terms of the big thing for me is that they've become hard to play against. They're great at pressure and they're really, really hard to move the ball against. But again, looking at previous premiership winners, Melbourne, Richmond, even Geelong back in the day, they were always the best at something. Collingwood still hasn't worked out what they want to be the best. They're just good at everything, which is great. So it's always a bonus season for them that if they can finish top 4 and just get some finals experience on them, then they'll be bigger for it next year. But again, I think just their experience and just where they're coming from, it's probably I don't see them as a serious threat to win the premiership this year.
I I look at them a little like probably a bit better, but I look at them like Hawthorn 3 or 4 years ago, where they
But on the way down,
they did have an easy draw and they finished top 4, and they've never felt like a top 4 team. Think they went out. Think they lost both finals.
Was that the Isaac Smith year? 2016? No, it was later.
I think it was later than that. I think it was like 18 or something. I kind of feels a bit like that, but I don't know. There's something about this Collingwood team. They seem to be a resilient side, and they got good players across all their lines. Probably just missing that key forward that can break a game open. I think they're just one play. They feel a player short at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny. You look at someone like Tex, who's re-signed at Adelaide. Probably would have been a really good fit for a season or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Then all of a sudden, Myercheck can become sort of your second guy who he feels like he's a bit of a medium position. Is he a general forward, Myercheck, or is he a key?
We got him as key because he
plays key, but
he has to.
Yeah. But yeah, he can sort of start to, and then you've obviously got players like Elliott and that. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. They're a hard team to get a real read on, and it's hard to predict what they're going to do in the next month, or who knows, maybe 2 months.
Before we move on from the Pies, Jack Ginnivan and the tackle from Mason Redmond. Any thoughts?
Well, it's a free kick.
Yeah.
Well, it should have been a free kick.
Yeah.
And I think that's been said 1,000 times, so I don't think we need to keep talking about it. But yeah, it's like the Fritsch thing, and like the goal umpires with the review. It's the same thing. You know, the umpires hear the commentary around Ginnivan, and they're looking for it, and he's shot himself in the foot a little bit by exaggerating it earlier in his career.
He still went to throw the arm up in that contest.
Yeah, so I think that's what got it wrong. I think what the umpire saw is, you're not allowed to throw your arm up, and that makes Redmond hit you in the head. So that's where it's like, play on.
But he'd already
as soon as Redmond actually takes a grip of the head and then pulls down again, that's the free kick. So I'm happy for the first initial contact play
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah.
But as soon as your arm wraps around their head, it's no longer like... It was almost like the umpire thought, okay, because he's lifted his arm, Mason Redmond has...
free reign
to do whatever because he's the one that's taking
just on this, though, I must say, that one was wrong. And there were a couple that were like, probably could have been a free. But I prefer fewer high tackle frees paid or high contact. And I felt like we had fewer paid. And those ones that are like, they're going to pay that.
Dropped by 30 from previous round.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I noticed there were less that were paid. And I preferred that. I get frustrated seeing those little borderline ones getting paid. And you just know they're going to, the umpires, you're just waiting to hear the whistle. I'm glad they're not paying those ones anymore, and I'm glad but still pay it. You're still going to pay the ones that are there, and the real high contact frees, pay them. But those other ones that sort of might slip slightly high or something like that, I'm happy with them to just be play on.
Fair enough. Moving on, we were discussing offline during the weekend, Christian, what a high-scoring round it seemed to be, aside from the Friday night game. We also saw Melbourne lost by a few points, by 10 points to the Dogs. There's an old wives' tale going around that if you're the first team to 100, you win the game, most of the time. The D's made it to 100 first in their game against the Dogs and ended up losing, which kind of sent a few people on Twitter into a spin saying, that old adage, it's been proven wrong again. So I thought I'd ask you, if you hit 100 first, are you any more or less likely to win the game than if you don't?
You are very much more likely to win the game if you hit 100 first. A little bit to do with the fact that usually you're the only team that there's been 11 games this year, I think, where both teams have hit 100. So it's not altogether rare. But again, you look at the numbers. So before the weekend, before Melbourne lost to the Bulldogs on the weekend, it was round 2, 2017 was the last time a team had reached 100 first and lost. So that was North Melbourne losing to Geelong in round 2, 2017. So I think we've seen about... I think I said it to you yesterday. There was about 240 games played since that round 2 game up until the Melbourne game where the first team to 100 had won. It was a 100% record. So it's a pretty good number. I mean, we did it to 75 as well. This year, if you were the first, this was early in the season, if you're first to 75, you win 75% of games. So pretty good record. But 100 seems to be that magical number. Not many teams lose once hitting the mark, but as you saw on Saturday night, never say never.
Never say never. High scoring round as well. You had some stats about Saturday in particular.
Yeah, well, sort of a high scoring round. Friday let us down, as we said, in a very low scoring draw. But yes, Saturday it was 1,012 points scored across the day from all the teams. So that's the 8th highest scoring day since '99. But the 4th highest scoring day that only had 5 games. So there's been a few games since '99 where we've had 6 games on in a day.
It's funny, we normally lament
more total points
in the middle of winter that games are a bit scrappier and a bit lower scoring, and we've had this out of the box.
Some of those first quarters in those games on
9
Saturday,
goals by the Swans.
8
goals for Hawthorn.
Yeah. I did notice that. That was actually going to be something I noticed. Because I had one of the games on and the other game was in the corner, and the score, like every 2 seconds, the score just kept changing, and it was just...
I was ready to turn the early games off because they were done and dusted, but the Crows sort of came back. They actually won the last 3 quarters, the Crows, against the Swans.
It was competitive. Yeah, there was a few games that were kind of like that. There you go.
I feel like scoring in the last 3 or 4 weeks, it feels like teams are a bit more attacking for this time of year than usual.
Well, we talked about Essendon last week and their attack at all costs mentality. Well, we could see that on the weekend in the last 2 minutes because they weren't able to defend and they were just going for this attacking sort of motion. So I guess when you are sort of maybe out of the race as well, you're just happy to sort of throw caution to the wind and try some things and experiment.
Having said that, though, I've been consistent on this for a long time. In my opinion, contrary to what the oldies will tell you, scoring does not equate to better football games.
No, I agree, yeah. You can have like low-scoring defensive contests that are quite engrossing and engaging.
The ideal score for me is around pretty much the average, around that sort of 75 to 80 point mark. I think that's a good amount of scoring. When you're getting both teams scoring 110, 120 points, it's too much. 40
12
goals
and
in a
Dunstall
game.
Kicking 14 at one end.
I don't want to see that much. No. It cheapens, it devalues a goal.
Get some defence.
Having said that, I also don't want to see, the 52-52 draw. There were parts of that game that were entertaining, but it was a bit of a scrap. And considering that game was at Marvel, I mean, that's not good enough.
And you better hope our friend of the pod, Rowan Connolly, doesn't listen to this episode because he's a big fan of those sort of games.
He likes Dunstall up one and kicking 13 and Lockett kicking 17.
Hey guys, we know you love your footy, but perhaps you fancy a bit of rugby too. If so, then why not check out ESPN Scrum Reset, where Sam Bruce and Christy Doran discuss all the hot topics in the game, from Super Rugby to the Wallabies and All Blacks, and even further afield. Available wherever you get your pods.
Is the hype justified or is it hyperbole? The segment where I'll say a statement. You guys tell me whether the hype is justified or I'm speaking in hyperbole. If you land on your feet after taking a screamer, Christian, you're not winning Mark of the Year.
Yeah, I'm a little bit... I think this is almost justified hype. We have to do a bit of a study on it. But yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. Mitch Georgiadis lands too cleanly. Gets up so high.
Todd Marshall.
And takes him at full stretch. So he takes him about 3 metres in the air or 3.5 metres up in the air. But then, just lands on his feet perfectly and goes back, takes his shots. Just not as exciting.
But isn't that more of a skill to be able to do that?
Oh, I agree. I agree. But I feel like, you don't get the votes. You don't get the popular votes if you don't have an acrobatic
Adam Sard,
ability.
another one too, landed on his feet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like if you fall to the ground, the further it's not about how high you get. It's about how far you fall and how cool you can make the roll afterwards and all that sort of stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean... I don't know. I'm not a big Mark of the Year kind of guy.
But you're a Brownlow guy.
No, I'm a Brownlow guy. I prefer the Goal of the Year to Mark of the Year. I feel like...
okay, Goal of the Year. Dacos winning that. Josh Dacos.
He won it. Did he win it last year?
Oh, that's testing me.
He did. No, Sarong won it last year. I reckon Dacos won it the year before.
Okay. I'll trust you on that one.
For a game on Anzac Day,
I remember the Brownlow. I remember he was nominated at the Brownlow. I can't remember if he won it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he won. Sarong, I'm pretty sure, got it last year. Oh, look, there's been a few good ones this year. Dacos is up there. Sarong himself kicked a really good goal a few weeks ago against Port in that same game where Charlie Dixon kicked that other ripper from the boundary.
Yep.
Oh, there's always good goals. It's always difficult to pick.
Sam Draper last week.
Oh, yeah.
We
talked about this.
Still got my vote.
We penciled it in, didn't we?
Did he win it? Are you searching that now, Christian? Did Dacos win it? I think he did.
We'll give the Wi-Fi a chance to catch up.
2020 goal of the year.
There you go. Well done. Time to scrap the medical subject.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, it's time
for what? For nothing?
It's time to... Well, I don't know. That's why I hesitated. I don't know if it's scrap the medical sub and go back to just having 4 on the bench and that's it. Or do we go and have just 5 on the bench and now it's 23 players? Or do we just go to 4 on the bench plus a sub?
That's the one.
And that's probably the one that makes the most sense.
Yep.
And have a sub, and it can be activated and used at any time for any reason. Doesn't have to be medical. It can be tactical. If you use your sub early and you get an injured player, tough luck. And that's the way it goes. But I think at the moment, there are too many teams taking advantage of the loose nature of the system.
I think Dimmer on Friday night might have...
We've seen
Miller came off, and then who was it that came on and had a really big impact?
Morris
Riewoldt Jr. came on and had...
Yeah, I mean, 2 totally different players. You know, it's a tight scrap. They need to get some energy.
Calf tightness or something.
Yeah, and he just comes off and sits on the bench.
Give me a spell.
Obviously, Chris Scott has come under a little bit of criticism too with Reece Stanley.
Who's apparently now out for 5 weeks.
Well, that is the thing. That was the thing of the medical sub, was you have to be reasonably expect the player not to be available for the next 12 weeks. I think we're up to 28 players that have played the next week after being subbed.
Well,
it's being taken.
That's the alternate part of it. Excuse me. Is if you're subbed out, you cannot play next week.
No, see, I don't agree with this because you might have a hamstring, like little tightness or something, and you go, well, I don't want to aggravate this further, but I'll be able to play next week.
No, but I'm with Jake. That's not a sub move then. Then you sit your ass down on the bench and you can't play for the rest of the game. But if it's just tightness and it's not an injury, then you're not. You know, that's just something that's just unlucky and you're sort of one short. But it's almost like, well, if you want to bring in a fresh player into this game, you need to sacrifice a player next week.
Maybe at Footy Tips on Twitter, let us know your thoughts. Jake, last one. Charlie Curnow's locked up the Coleman medal.
Well, I thought he had, to be honest. I think he's 5 ahead now.
Ahead of Jez, yep.
Ahead of Jeremy Cameron.
Jerry Cameron,
yeah. Jeremy Cameron is 5 behind. But we just had a quick look before at round 23 because it does generally come down around 23. And who do the Cats play? They play West Coast at GMHBA Stadium. And I'm telling you now, the actual fixture isn't out yet in terms of who's playing when. But if Geelong is playing, take all gambling advice with a grain of salt and gamble responsibly. But if Geelong is playing after Carlton, I would be putting money on Jeremy Cameron to win the Coleman medal. Because if he's within 8...
I was going to say, what number does he need to be within?
If he's within 8...
Within 8.
I would... Put it this way. If he needs 8 to win it, I'd rather be on Cameron needing 8 than be sitting on Curnow 8 in front having already played.
The difference is Carlton are fighting for a spot either in the 4 or for a home final in the
Geelong
first week.
could have top spot locked up.
Correct.
They're playing the worst... The one of the 2 worst teams in the league at home. And if you remember when Jeremy Cameron won the Coleman medal a few years back for the Giants, I think it was the same situation. I can't remember who was in front. It might have been Riewoldt or someone was in front by about 8. Or Ben Brown or someone.
I reckon it was Ben Brown, yeah. And
he was in front by about 8 or 7, and Cameron I think kicked 9 in that game.
Gold Coast, yeah.
And it feels a similar sort of thing. They just kept feeding him the ball, and I would not be surprised if the same thing happened. So it'll be very interesting to see, and who knows? They might schedule both games Saturday night.
Head to head.
They might do them both on Saturday night.
You might see an NRL style checking the phone at half time from Jez.
Yeah. I wonder if they'd tell him.
Look, again, we're not encouraging people to...
If they're on at the same time, then I'd take Curnow. And if Carlton plays after, I'd obviously take Curnow. But if Carlton's already played and Cameron needs 7 or 8, I would be reasonably confident he'd get it against West Coast.
Again, take any advice with a grain of salt. Jake likes to go to Vegas and play poker, so you can see how that turns out sometimes. Footy Tips on Twitter. Questions, comments, feedback, do let us know. Also, rate us on iTunes if you want. Let everyone know how much you enjoy the pod. We enjoy making it, so we hope you enjoy listening to it. Christian, thanks for joining us again this week. Jake, good to speak with you, and hopefully you're up and about. Continue to get up and about as you recover from COVID. To everyone at home, we'll speak to you in the next episode.
Listen to all the latest episodes by subscribing to the ESPN Footy Pod, wherever you get your podcasts.